everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Thomas Goes Nostalgic, and on this episode, we're working on the third floor of our Channel 6 news building, Diorama. Once again, welcome back, folks. If you caught my last 3 episodes, on the first episode, we built the whole entire Channel 6 news building. The second episode, we did the lobby. And then on the last episode, we did some office space for Burns and a little reception area for Irma. So that was a split diorama. So the third floor is going to be a split diorama as well, based on 2 of my favorite episodes. So the first side is going to be based off of the Catwoman from Channel 6 box set from that episode. So I think I want to do April's dressing room. And the other side is going to be for Slash, when he actually uses his turtleizer ray to turn Vern and Burns into turtles, and he wants to rule the world by turning everyone to turtles. So I thought it was really cool to use that scene where he breaks into the Channel 6 news building, and then that will make up the third floor. And if you haven't checked out those last 3 videos, I'll put the link down in the description, but you probably want to check those out before we start working on this project. And folks, if you've been watching me along this journey and haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and subscribe. That would help me out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. So now that we have an idea of what we're going to be basing this diorama off of, let's get to it.
And now that we're looking at this space, you're going to see how I'm going to split the diorama. So the Catwoman from Channel 6 will be on the left, and then the scene from the episode with Slash will be on the right. So screen accurate wise, this isn't true to the cartoon because these 2 episodes didn't occur together, but I just thought this would be a cool idea to kind of tell 2 stories within one diorama. So this is pretty much the setup of how it's going to go. I already started priming all the walls. I didn't prime the floor because I have to carve all the wood grain into the floor, but I also have to carve all the squares into the ceiling as well. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we can get started. But I also do have to put in the center wall that will divide the diorama in half. So I'll measure up for that. We'll carve the floor and the ceiling tile, and then we can start adding some detail. So I scored my lines and my area where the divider wall will go, and I've also made the impressions for the magnets, but now I'm going to start carving in my wood grain. So I do this about 1 inch apart, and I'm going to make sure that I put the lines horizontally in some random areas so it doesn't look so uniform. They're not all going in a straight line across. And then I like to take my pencil and make these thick impression lines because it looks like that wood grain that is very cartoony. So I'll be doing this throughout the whole section, and I feel like it really does give you that exaggerated cartoon look. So when it's all painted, this comes out pretty cool. I might not do this for every section that involves wood, but we'll do it for this floor. And going over to the ceiling piece, I'm not really focused too much on details with the ceilings because they're not going to be seen all that much. But for the side of Slash's room, I'm just going to put some 1 inch by 1 inch tile just so it has some texture. But April's dressing room pretty much just has a brown wall, so I really won't put any detail on that. I'm going to add the magnets for that divider wall and then make sure that's secure before we can actually start priming everything. So now everything is completely primed. I've done the walls prior to this project, and then I just did the floors and the ceiling so we can start adding some detail. I'm going to add a little detail to the ceiling. It's just going to get painted one flat color because it's, like I said, it's not really going to be seen that much. So the side with Slash's diorama will get just some gray tile, and then the side for April's will just get a brown coat because her ceiling in the animated show looked like it was just brown. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now I'm starting on the floor piece, and I didn't have to carve wood grain into the side for April's diorama for her dressing room, but I wanted to experiment a little bit because when we move to the next floor, I wanted to see which version of the carving that I like better. There's the thicker wood on the right, or I made some thin wood slats on the left because that's going to get hidden by carpet, so I figured I'd use the bottom of that just to kind of test out what looks better to me. So everything's going to get a brown coat, and then I'm just going to leave the right side without a dry brushing, and then I'll dry brush the left side, and whichever one I like is going to determine what I do on the next floor. So painting the walls itself will be easy. I'm just choosing some flat colors that I'm going to use. I'm going to use a muted blue, a muted yellow, and a very light gray. But it was difficult because if you're watching the cartoon for reference, even from frame to frame in the same scene, they're not consistent with the color of the walls. So this I kind of just decided to kind of wing it and choose the colors that I wanted. I didn't want everything to be the same color, so April's room will pretty much be the same kind of tan, but I wanted the room with Slash to have some varying colors, especially some of the details from that episode I wanted to make sure I got, even though it wasn't consistent on the show. And just using this April figure for scale, I marked a line for the side molding because there's going to be a molding piece on the floor about halfway up the wall, and then there'll be one at the ceiling. So I'll just mark my line for that so I know where that molding piece will go. And normally before I even prime, I like to score all my lines, but I forgot to do this. But you can still do it even after you prime. The lines will still come out pretty well. So I'm just going to score all the side paneling, and then we can get ready to paint this wall. Now, in reference from the cartoon, it looked like the walls for April's dressing room were all one color, but I wanted some variations. So we're going to do the molding a tan and the walls a light beige. And before I put any of the molding pieces on, I want to make sure that I slice out the foam for my doors. So I only have to do 2 doors on this section, so I'll cut up a bunch of flat pieces because I'll also need some of those flat pieces when I start building some of the furniture for April's room as well. And I cut out a bunch of these thin pieces for the molding and the door trim, and I'm just measuring the door from Burns's office just so I have the doors on this floor consistent with the floor below. I'm also going to work on some of the details before I even put the doors on, so the doorknobs will all be put together and ready, and then I'll build the trim around the door instead of previously where I built the trim and then tried to cut the door to fit inside the trim. And the doorknobs are complete, and I cut out a very thin piece to match the size of one of the doors because I wanted to add some extra detail. It's just kind of that decorative cutouts you see on most doors, so I'm going to do that with the side for April's dressing room, and then I'll glue that on top. And I've been using these silly winks as my carpet, so I'm just going to cut out a small piece because that will go on the floor for April's dressing room, so she has that blue carpet. But then I also had some of this pink fabric that I'll use as an area rug that will go inside her dressing room. So painting all of the walls is complete. I did a 2-tone on one of the walls in Slash's room, got the doors attached and the doorknobs. So now I'm going to start working on all the molding and the door frames and get that done before we can start adding the last bit of detail. There was a main design element from one of the cartoons that I really wanted to include. So the scene with Slash breaking into the Channel 6 News building, there was a cool wall panel that had these geometric shapes on, which was very consistent with some of the design choices of the late 80s and early 90s. And I wanted to make sure that I had that on the diorama. So I'm using the silly winks, just cutting out these shapes, and then we'll cut it and color it all these different colors before we put it onto the panel. So I went ahead and painted these shapes. I'm just going to glue them on, and this will be that design element that I think makes it very specific to that one episode, because I don't think we ever saw this again, but I'm glad I got to incorporate this into this piece. I'm going to repurpose this chair that I had in the sewer layer in the kitchen scene and take some scrap pieces of foam and just measure out the desk or the vanity that April has in her dressing room. So I'm going to carve in some square lines to make it look like there's drawers, and then we'll get this painted and into the dressing room to see how it looks. So the vanity is painted. I have one more thing to attach there. That side panel wall is done, and I'm just working on some windows now. So the big window will go inside Slash's room, and I did it consistent with the last diorama. I made a little slip so I can slip this photo inside, and then I also made this small window so that I can put a smaller picture inside of April's dressing room. And I wanted to make sure there's a windowsill there. This way the cat that came with the Channel 6 News pack can stand on that windowsill. And something that I'm trying to do with all of the old action figure boxes I have with the plastic window, I'm cutting out all of my windows out of that packaging. So whatever project calls for a window, I just cut out to the size I need, and that'll give it some depth as far as making it have that reflective look. So I can just slip it inside that pocket and this window's good to go. And the last thing I'm going to do is add on to the vanity. I thought it'd be cool to take a photo of the Catwoman from Channel 6 in the chair, and that'll be almost like a reflective image. So I'll have April sitting in the chair, I'll take a photo, and then I'll slip it into what looks like a mirror so that when April's sitting in the chair, from a back view, it'll look like she's transforming in the mirror. And I'm not sure what episode I saw this in, but I did notice April did have a star on her door for being a star reporter. So I think I'll make that as well. And the vanity mirror is complete, and I did this along the same lines as I've done the windows. I made that little slip so that if I want to change the image that's on the inside, if I wanted it to have a different reflection, it could, but I thought this would just be cool to keep in there for now if I want to have April posed up looking at herself transforming. So that'll be the image for now. I'm pretty happy with it, so I think we'll keep it. Now we just got to glue it to the vanity, and this part's done. And there you have it, folks. The third floor of our Channel 6 news building diorama is complete. I really wanted to make sure I captured some of the elements from the cartoon, so I was really happy to get that panel with the geometric shapes on it from Slash's episode. And then I also wanted to make sure that NECA gives us some great accessories. So anywhere that I can build a display where it's meant just for those accessories so we can keep them out of the box and actually use them is perfect. So making the windowsill and being able to put the cat on there, to me, was awesome. One of my favorite design elements, even though it's so simple. And if you see the stills that I'm using for the buildings and the pictures from the windows, I did find a digital art display of the NECA backdrop for the tmnt Toon diorama. So I've really just been printing that onto high gloss paper and then cutting it to size for the window frame, and I'll do it varying sizes. So in the room for Slash, I actually did make it larger, but then the room for April, I made things seem like they were further away just because of the size of the window. I didn't know if that mattered, but the window design on the cartoon don't really matter either, because it's all these little windows, but when you look from the outside of the building, it looks like the whole building's made of windows. So even though it doesn't make sense internally, we kind of suspend disbelief for the sake of the cartoon. But being able to create some of these scenes from the show has really been a lot of fun. So the Catwoman from Channel 6, creating that scene with April and Irma. Right after this, Irma is grabbing the turtle comm and calling the turtles to let them know that April needs help. And then also creating the scene where Slash turtleizes Burn and Vern. So I thought that was really cool. I really just wanted to make sure that I had some of the design elements from each of the episodes, even though I couldn't fit in all the details due to space, but I really am happy with the way this came out. And folks, that does it with this episode. If you've been following me along this journey, stay tuned, because we're going to the newsroom next. And as always, if you like this content, hit like, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notifications of when I post my next episode. Until then, we'll catch you next time.